our guest is Jeff Dixon.
It's great advice for us all to slow down and pay attention to the details and not miss the moment looking for the next one.
And pass it on. Share the gospel clear and strong. Stand for, claim your heritage of truth.
Welcome to Heritage of Truth. Today our guest is Jeff Dixon. Welcome.
Nice to be here.
Well, Jeff is the author of a series that takes place in the Magic Kingdom in Florida, in Disney World. How did you ever think to start writing books about that?
Well, I'm an Orlando native. I'm one of the few. There's just 2 or 3 of us, I think, that have been there all our lives. But I got a chance to go into the Magic Kingdom before it opened, as they were previewing it for city employees and things like that. My dad worked for the city of Orlando for a number of years. And so I fell in love with the Disney magic. I had always watched Uncle Walt on TV on Sunday nights. But then after being there and realizing that this is a lot different than I thought it was going to be, a lot bigger than I thought it was going to be, I had the bug, I guess. And so I've had the good fortune of being able to live close enough to Orlando to raise my kids in the theme parks and always visit. And just been very fascinated with not just the theme parks, but with Walt, his life as a storyteller and things like that.
And did you ever actually work at the theme park?
I did. Like so many other Orlando kids, you know, when you need a job and you don't know where to go, you go to Disney. And so one of my first jobs ever was as a cast member at Walt Disney World. And back then it was just the Magic Kingdom. That was before Epcot ever opened up. And so I actually was a character in the park for a while. And it was great fun. I got to march in parades and I got to be a character. So maybe somebody that's listening to us will actually have a picture of me. They just don't know it's me. I'm in a costume somewhere.
So you allowed to say which character?
I am now. I was Goofy.
You were Goofy. Oh, great.
So it was great. And, you know, and I said at the time, and of course my parents laughed at me. I said, "Oh, this is such a great job. I mean, I would do this for free." And my dad laughed and said, "Well, you probably wouldn't do it very long for free, but I'm glad you like the job." So in hindsight, he was right. It was good.
That's great. Well, tell us what your your books are about. They're actual fiction.
They are.
Yeah, so why don't you tell us a little bit about the series?
They're a fictional series that actually is based on an event that happened to me in my real life. I sat down a few years ago with a Disney Imagineer over lunch out at Disney Hollywood Studios. And I asked him one question. I said, "You guys at Disney, in the theme parks, as an entertainment company, you tell stories that people never forget." I said, "Each Sunday morning I stand up and I'm charged with explaining to people the greatest story ever told. That's my job as a pastor. I unpack that every week. And yet sometimes by the time they get to lunch, they can't remember what I said an hour before. But I remember the stories that Disney's been telling all my life." I said, "So I would like for you to help me, if you wouldn't mind, become a better storyteller." And so my staff and I sat with him, and he very graciously started talking about the art of storytelling, how Imagineers tell a story when you walk through a theme park. And so it became a very pivotal transformational moment for me. But then beyond that, I was sitting around one day and kind of thinking about, praying about, wondering about, what am I going to do different this year than last year? And one of the things that kind of rolled across my brain, and I think it was God, said, "Well, why don't you try to write a book?" And so then you start thinking about, what are you going to write about? Well, write about what you know. And so I took that real life event, and I said, well, what if Walt Disney had decided that the way to preserve his legacy and protect all the things that he had that were a part of his life, what if he had chosen an Imagineer whose job it was to put a plan into place that would somehow protect the kingdom? Who would he choose? And then I said, well, what if the Imagineer chose a pastor like maybe me, who sat down with him at lunch one day, and they became friends? And so that became the spark for the story, where a pastor gets to live the ultimate Disney fan's dream. So my lead character is a pastor, because I understand pastors, and he gets put in an impossible situation where he becomes the handpick of Walt Disney himself to become the caretaker of the Disney empire, and all the things that go horribly wrong with that, because it's an adventure series.
Wow. Well, that's cool. Your books are loaded with history and trivia and secrets about Walt Disney World. Why do those intrigue you so much?
Well, I think that for any guest that goes to a Disney theme park, they can do the normal, let's just cram all the rides we can in, let's see everything that we can, we'll be exhausted at the end of the day, and they go home broke, and they go home exhausted, and they say, well, this is a once-in-a-lifetime trip. But when they walk out the door, they miss so much. Because Disney is like, the Disney theme parks are like parks that you can't find anywhere else, because they're always telling a story, and it's always about the story. And so if you want to take the time to slow down, if you want to take the time to really look around, you will see things you never knew. And if you will pay attention to the details, there is a lot that's there that makes the experience much more rich and much more brilliant. And I think that that's part of the genius of Walt Disney. His life as a shaper of culture is pretty much historical now, and everyone understands a lot of it. But at the same time, he was always trying to communicate and connect with an audience and tell things and do things that they would remember, that wasn't like everybody else, something that they would remember forever and create a moment or a memory. And I think that that's the beauty of the Disney theme parks. And so I tried to weave that into the story. And so a lot of times in the stories, there's things that people don't realize are in the parks that are just right in front of them, hidden in plain sight, but they never notice them because they never slow down long enough to see them.
So do your readers ever say, is any of this real when they read your books?
I get letters and email every week from somebody who has taken a book to the park, and they've said, I read about this, is this real or did you make this up? And the fun of the books is, for the most part, I really don't have to make it up. I just have to kind of find the stories. And usually then I will get a picture from somebody that has taken a picture on their vacation. So I get people's vacation photos, and they say, we just love the story, we found this, we dug this out, and we really found it was there. And sometimes they're really surprised because they think I'm kidding when I say, no, it's real, go find it. But they do. And it's a great example of that is if you're walking in the Magic Kingdom in the train station, and if you slow down long enough, you can actually hear Morse code being tapped out. And people hear it and they go, what's it clicking? And then if you listen long enough, you think, okay, that's actually Morse code, I think. But no one knows Morse code, right? And so I've written about that in one of the books, and someone wrote me and said, well, it's not Morse code. I know Morse code. And I said, but do you know American Morse or railroad Morse? And what happened is that the Disney Imagineers created a train station where they're tapping out Walt's speech from opening day in Disneyland. But what they did is, because it's set in a railroad station, before International Morse code became the common practice, there was a different type of Morse code that was used called American Morse. And that's the message that's being typed out. Well, it's there, and it plays all the time, and it plays in an endless loop. But people just walk through there, and they're talking, and they pay no attention to the fact that there's actually a storyline that's playing out behind you as you're walking into the very first place you're at the Magic Kingdom.
So after talking to this Imagineer, how has it influenced what you do in your church?
It makes me very mindful of everything that we do, and trying to give people moments to connect to, that they can hold on to, and that they can remember, and helping guide them through. Because I need to give a Bible study, a sermon, a worship event. You're taking people through a variety of emotions as they move through God's Word. And not that you're playing on emotions, but you're tapping into something that's going on. Something that's going on in your life this week. It's been a good week. It's been a bad week. What's there? What's God saying? And then more importantly, what does it mean to me? Now what do I do with this? And then this week, how am I going to live and flesh this out? And helping me to understand and slow down the story and make sure that I give enough content to make it important enough for them to walk out the door, and challenge them enough to plug it in. And I think in doing that, it has helped kind of change the way I approach preaching. It also changes some of the things that we let people do, because Disney's great at attacking the senses. Everything around you is just trying to get you to notice something. And so we've worked that into worship at times, where the unexpected sounds, or the sights, or the smells, or the taste, or getting people to move and do things where you're just not sitting and listening to content, but you become a participant at times. And so we've become known in some ways for immersive teaching and immersive worship, where every once in a while we just have you doing something what seems on the surface really weird, but at the same time connects people to remember, okay, when I walk out the door, this is what I'm going to take, and this is what I'm going to do.
So they might actually remember your sermon point.
Hopefully. If they can remember more than a week, I'm thrilled to death. The other thing that we've done with it, though, is because I don't know how a lot of families are, but I know that for me, when I was a kid growing up, we would go see a Disney film. And we would come back from the Disney film, and we would talk about it. We would unpack it. And we tried to design worship where you unpack it over the course of the week. Even in our structure in church ministry, One of the things that happens is when our crowd comes back on Wednesday evening, we spend a block of time on purpose Wednesday evening saying, okay, let's talk about how you applied what you heard Sunday. What did you do with the now what? And so you get to sit in a room and hear what other people are doing with it. People just like you and me. And I don't have to talk. I mean, I can let them talk and unpack it. And sometimes I sit there and listen and go, wow, they really got it. And other times I sit there and go, well, they didn't get a thing I said. You know, and it's a great way to evaluate what you're doing and how you're connecting with people. Because if what we're doing with Scripture and God's Word isn't transformational and people's lives are changing, then they might as well just be watching a Disney Channel. Because then we're just in the process of entertaining and let them just sit around and do nothing. And so I want to engage them and I want them to get it right because we only get one crack at this thing.
Are the Disney stories that you write transformational, do you think?
I hope so. I hope so. The moments that you deal with and you look at stories and they somehow connect with you and they create within you some type of response, I mean, that changes something within you. I remember as a kid watching Old Yeller get shot and just completely traumatized. You know, you think, it's never going to be the same after this. Yet at the same time, you walk out and you can hum the songs, you remember the songs, you remember the moments. And so for Disney, as a storyteller, he created moments that he was always trying to read the audience and trying to make sure that they got the message that he wanted. If they got the message and they left and they were different, it becomes transformational. I think any moment that we can do that in the art of storytelling, it's a good moment. And so my lead character is a pastor. His life is far from perfect. As a matter of fact, he's a horribly flawed lead pastor. Somebody wrote me one time and said, you know, I have such a hard time believing your story because my pastor is so much better than your lead character. And I said, well, of course. You know, I wrote a character that was flawed, that had that were like most of the pastors I know, where they have to make choices. You know, life and death, right or wrong. You know, what would God want me to do? And is it really God or is it just me? You know, how far would I go to protect the people I love? How much am I willing to push against the culture, and what lines am I going to cross? And so his journey, in some ways, becomes transformational. What I found out now that there's a series and it's kind of unfolded, and I've been at it now for a while, is that I hear back from people on a regular basis saying, you know, I appreciate so much what you wrote, what you did, how you said it. In one of the books, a character dies, and the pastor, the lead character, has to do the funeral. And in that, I was able to unpack a concept that for some, it got a lot of feedback, where I shared that a lot of times when someone passes away, you hear people offer lame advice, like, you know, time will pass and you'll get closure. And one of the things that I wrote as the lead character sharing with the crowd was that you don't want closure. Why would you want closure if you love someone? You don't need closure. Don't pray for closure. That's a dumb idea. Pray for enclosure. In other words, pray for God to give you the opportunity to take the moments and the memories that you have and enclose them up in your heart. And there's going to be some days that you want to unpack that and open it back up and relive those moments because they're precious. And then you close them back up and you move forward. And that's how you move past it. You don't close the chapter and move away. You enclose the chapter so you can move forward. And I wrote that in the context of fiction. Well, as you can imagine, anyone who had lost anybody that they really loved, I was hearing back from them saying, thank you so much for that, and thank you so much for sharing that. And even though it's fiction, it resonated. And so I want to hope that the books are transformational. And I also hear from folks that say things like, you know, I don't know the God that your characters in the book are talking about. I want to know him better. And so we've had people fly in from all over the country, actually all over the world, to come to church on a Sunday morning on their vacation to meet and say, I want to meet the guy that's writing these Disney books because we love them and we're talking about God and we want to hear what you're doing. And so they'll come and they'll visit. So it's been great fun. So the answer is I hope they're transformational, even though they're a work of fiction and they're designed to be fun. You know, I'm not trying to write anything that's real highbrow here. This is just an adventure, mystery. Let's just roll up our sleeves and just, you know, relax and have a good time.
Really good fiction, I have found, causes me to question my own thinking and motivations and everything. So I'm excited to read your books and find out, you know, what you're talking about.
Hopefully they will. I mean, most of us can relate to struggles and decisions and moments that, you know, life isn't turning out the way that you thought.
And it only works when the characters are real, when they're genuine.
Yeah, hopefully
like real people.
Real people.
And it sounds like yours are.
And I stuck with pastors because that was just easy pickings for me because I know a lot of them. And a lot of people, I appreciate the fact that people put their pastors up on pedestals. I think that's awesome. At my church, where I'm privileged to lead a group of people, they are convinced that I am the chief among sinners, just like Paul. And so they I think that pedestal cracked a long time ago. They love me, flaws and all. And I'm glad they do. And I'm very, very thankful for that. And this is a lead character that probably is similar to that from the standpoint he's far from perfect.
The books are loaded with details, and God is in the details. So how does that come across in your book and in our lives?
Well, I think that a lot of times we are so busy living life that we don't slow down long enough to appreciate how God is blessing, how he's working, and we don't notice the details because we're always looking for the next thing. And we're always so busy chasing the next thing that we fail to live the moment that we've got. And God, I think, sometimes really would like for us to slow down and notice some of those details. And that's just, it's the culture I think we live in. I mean, the culture has just run away with us, and we are now slaves to clocks and every other electronic device that we have. And we're so busy, and not necessarily doing bad things, but we're so busy doing all the good things that perhaps we're missing the God moments that he gives us. And so, for example, in a Disney theme park, if you're there and you've got something in your hand to throw away, you can't walk anywhere in a Disney theme park and walk over 27 steps before you find a garbage can.
That's right.
27 steps. That's not rocket science. It's because Walt Disney sat and watched people in his theme park in Disneyland. How far would they walk before they just do it on the ground? So you don't notice that you never have to walk around with trash in your hand because there's always a conveniently located garbage can. That's a fun little detail. I mean, it's goofy, but it's a fun detail. Well, in our lives, I mean, how many times is it that God really just provide a way for us to kind of move through life without having to carry some of the trash? I mean, that's a blessing for us, right? And he gives us the opportunity to offload it, download it. He takes care of it. The problem is solved. And yet we're so busy just looking for something else that we miss what he's doing. We miss that detail of our life. And so I think the details add a richness to our life. I think the details add some joy that we miss out on in the journey sometimes. And I think if we're really serious about following God, that we can find him in every moment and in every situation. And I think that gives us joy. And so I think that it's great advice for us all to slow down and pay attention to the details and not miss the moment looking for the next one. And so if we could do that, I think our lives would be better.
Well, Orlando has been the scene of some really awful things that have happened. And I was just wondering how your church responded to that.
We've had a rough run in Orlando between a shooting of a pop star, our terrorist attack, and then a little kid getting snatched away from his family in one of our theme parks by a gator. And we were reminded, I think all of us in Central Florida, just how precious life is, how quickly life can change. And I think how much we really do need God, because how many things there are in life that really are beyond our control. And so we responded in a variety of ways, but we just had a bunch of hurting people. And the big thing that people wanted to know is, what can I do? You know, when 49 people are killed on a Saturday night before church on a Sunday morning, and you find out there's another 50 that are still in the hospital, there's that moment of we don't know how to respond. We want to do something. How can we roll up our sleeves and get to work? And I think the one thing that we discovered and our church kind of moved through is that you have to love people. We heard a lot of people giving a lot of opinions about, making statements. For all the statements that I heard that came out of the Christian community, one of the things that I constantly said was, if you have to front load your statement with a disclaimer, due to theological beliefs, or we're not endorsing this, but we want people to know that we love them. If you have to front load your message, you might as well not share the message. At the end of the day, what you do and how you respond is you love people, just like Jesus did. Every person that died is someone that Jesus loved enough to go to the cross for. Jesus wept, he was heartbroken, and he's there to give support and peace and hope to these families that will hold on to him. And I shared as a pastor, that's what we have to do. And so I think some of the best work that we did was in being able to pray with other folks conversations that took place with a group of high school kids over ice cream sandwiches that were saying, man, it was a scary week. What do we do? How do you even respond to terror? Trying to work with a community that sometimes feels like it's excluded from the Christian community and sometimes oppressed by the Christian community, and being able to simply say, God loves you. I love you. There's no conditions on that. And how can I help you? How can I pray for you? And being able to stand up. And I didn't use the phrase Orlando Strong. The one that we settled in on was Orlando Stands, because it dawned on me that to come back from something like this, you don't have the strength to do it. None of us do. But because of who Jesus is, I do have strength, and so I'll stand because of him. I'm good when I stand with my brothers and sisters, and we can kind of support and encourage and pray for each other. I can stand then. And, we can come back from this, and the community will come back from this, but we come back together, and we come back stronger. But we come back stronger because we haven't faced it alone, and so God gives us the strength to stand. And so we settled in on Orlando Stands, and that's the phrase that we've used time and time again with anybody that we've shared with. And so as people pray for us in the days ahead, just pray that Orlando will continue to stand. We're bouncing back. We're doing good.
Okay. Well, where can people find you online?
They can find me at touchandchange.net.
Is that touch and?
Touchandchange.net.
Okay.
And you can actually watch my hair go from black to white because there's a lot of stuff that's on there. Now, I color my hair this color. My hair color is naturally just white. And so for years, I would color it black to be, mature and stuff like that. And then I quit doing it, and I discovered my hair was really black. So now I color it this color. This is smoke black, I call it. So I can relate to people who are generational in my congregation. So this is the smoke black hairdo that I wear now, and I color it this way so I can connect with them. So people can watch various hair colors, various hairstyles, various lengths. But it's always very casual and very relaxed, and it's all free. So come check us out. I think they'll find some things that they like.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for being our guest.
Thanks for having me.
Share the gospel clear and strong.
Do you really color your hair?
No, I used to.
Stand